Hello guys, thank you so much for coming back to watch another video on my channel. Resident Evil 9 is a game that we horror enthusiasts are waiting patiently to see some sort of an official confirmation from Capcom themselves. We know it's currently in development and Capcom is not going to abandon this franchise anytime soon, as lately this franchise has been the most successful for the company, whether we're talking about the mainline Resident Evil titles or the remakes they have been making. And hopefully in 2024 we'll see some sort of an announcement for this title either on a Capcom showcase or a Resident Evil showcase. However, in the meantime, we had some leaks about this game which confirm that what we can expect to see from this major upcoming Resident Evil title. So without wasting any time, let's discuss everything we know about Resident Evil 9. Now if you're brand new to my channel and you do end up liking the video I made for you, do give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. It allows me to make more of this content for you guys. Resident Evil franchise have seen a massive success lately thanks to Resident Evil 7 and the games which have followed after that, and Capcom is now willing to spend enough time and do enough investment on this brand to ensure this flourish moving forward. And we know Resident Evil 9 is one of their biggest priority at the moment, and we are seeing trends with Capcom at the moment. The Capcom is now focusing on the main numbered Resident Evil titles along with the remakes, and we've seen Resident Evil 4 remake which came out in 2023. Then the next title, which is a dead giveaway that we would be expecting to see from them, is Resident Evil 9. Now we all know that Resident Evil 7 was a soft reboot of this franchise which started with a brand new protagonist, a brand new setting, which concluded at the end of Resident Evil 8 Village, where we've seen the end of Ethan Winter's storyline, and also we've seen a returning protagonist as Chris Redfield, who played an integral role in 2 games, because to show that this game and these 2 games are not a hard reboot but continuing on as to what has started from Resident Evil 1. Now we know Resident Evil 9 is going to follow the same sort of themes, and instead of following trilogy they just conclude the story in 2 games, which I think is completely fine because it doesn't necessarily need to be a trilogy of the series, and I think if they're going to conclude it in 2 games, that's completely fine by me. Now I think Resident Evil 9 is now going to be a fresh new start of this franchise again, and if you look at the themes of what they've been following with Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 8, that we will see a brand new protagonist who would continue this franchise, let's say for 1, 2 or let's say 3 games, and then we'll see some returning characters as well, because they're not doing a hard reboot, which I think is completely fine, because I love characters like Chris, Leon, Rebecca, and all of those characters need to continue with the story, and they can continue to do the remakes which they're already working on. So I think that's a brilliant idea to continue to move this franchise without doing a hard reboot. Now let's look at the leaks we've seen for Resident Evil 9 so far. We know the first leak, which was in 2021 done by Duscolum himself. He's a known leaker in the Resident Evil community, and he confirmed that Resident Evil 9 is been in development since 2018, which makes it to be the longest title in the Resident Evil franchise which has been in development. Now this solidifies to me that Capcom is fully confident on this brand, on this franchise. Now they're not just willing to spend investment but also time to ensure that they make the perfect quality Resident Evil title. Now if you take this leak into consideration, that means that Resident Evil 9 has been in development since 2018, which makes up to 6 years so far, and I personally don't think that Resident Evil 9 is going to come out in 2024. I think we'll see it in the early 2025. So you can imagine how much of a quality content you're going to get from Resident Evil 9, because Resident Evil 9 is still using the RE engine which was introduced in Resident Evil 7. Now RE engine doesn't take that long to produce a Resident Evil game, and from Resident Evil 7 onward, if you look at every Resident Evil title, whether you like it or not, you can all agree that the assets or the environment, they all look fantastic. So it makes you think that why they're taking that much time to produce a game, which makes you think the scope of the game is going to be, let's say, the biggest we've seen from any Resident Evil games, or the game isn't going to introduce us to a brand new mechanics we've never seen it before. And to be honest, I'm glad that they're taking their time and they're not doing any announcement, they're not teasing anything until the game is ready, and that's the right way of doing it, because I want to make sure this game turn out to be the biggest game we have seen in this franchise. Now, that was just a leak about how long the game has been in development, but the biggest leak we've seen related to Resident Evil 9 was in 2022, which confirmed as the setting and the monster and what we can expect from the game design of Resident Evil 9. And this leak was on 4chan, and take it with a grain of salt, because that's the only leak we have about this game, which actually talks about the location and the enemies and what we can expect from the environment. Now, we know Capcom loves to give code names of the projects they work on, as we've seen that continue from Resident Evil 7 all the way to now. So Resident Evil 9 apparently was called Resident Evil Apocalypse. Then it moved on to confirm about the setting. Apparently the setting is somewhere in the western part of America in a ghost town, whereas a certain investigation is going to take place, and it kind of gives me a hint that our protagonist is going to be an investigator, and I personally think that's a really good idea. You could have a rookie investigator. We've seen a rookie cop with Resident Evil 2 remake. You could have a rookie investigator who goes to this place to find out about murders. We're seeing that sort of trend with Alan Wake 2 as well, so I think it would work with Resident Evil 9, where you can have this protagonist who's not very good with fighting, but let's say he's get involved or she gets involved in this sort of environment through investigation. Then it further confirms we're going to be able to see some caves and some rivers, some small town and some camping site, which kind of goes back to Resident Evil Village, where you can explore the area. So I think they're continuing the same theme, and I personally do enjoy it. I love resource management. I love to explore and find every crook and cranny in a game, so I can have enough material so I can go and fight the next big monster. So I think that's a really good idea to continue the same trend with Resident Evil 9. Now, this time around, the game is apparently going to focus mostly on our body horror. We're going to be seeing some deformed creatures or enemies, and they're going to represent some mythical creatures like Wendigo or Goatman, which I think is a very interesting point, because if you look at Resident Evil 8, they focus on the mythos of Gothic, where you've seen like werewolves and vampire-like enemies and creatures, and this time around you're focusing on a Native American horror folklore, where you're going to be seeing some Wendigo-like creatures or Goatman, which I think is really interesting for Resident Evil 9. Now, the most interesting point from that leak for me was that some of the enemies is going to mimic as humans. They're going to try to pretend to be humans as friendly NPCs in the game, and then you have to observe their behaviors to find out if it's an actual friendly NPC or an enemy. I personally think this is a brilliant idea to implement in a game, as we've seen that in the movie, The Thing, where these creatures can pretend to be humans, and the same thing can be happening with Resident Evil 9, where these NPCs, or let's say these enemies who's going to pretend to be friendly NPCs, they're going to have human voices and they're going to try to come closer to you, and you're going to observe their behaviors. And I think this is going to increase the fear factor, because you don't know if you can trust this character, this NPC, or not. Now, the leak further confirmed that this time around we're going to be seeing a forest environment, which is going to be a proper unsettling setting for you to walk into, and I think without a map you will get lost, and I think that's going to increase to the survival horror element, because as much as I love the gothic western town, I personally love to have this sort of setting as a forest where you don't know what's around the corner and you cannot trust anything. I think this is just going to up the survival horror element for Resident Evil 9. Then the leak further confirms we're going to be seeing some interesting mechanics in the game. For example, you'll be able to barricade yourself inside, you can even lock the doors, and you can also use melee breakable objects or weapons, for example like axes, which I think is interesting because we've never seen that with the previous Resident Evil games. Then it further moves on to confirm that one of the early bosses we're going to be fighting was called Barghest, and it's going to be like a giant black dog with a twist. So again, going back to the mythical sort of creatures with a body horror, which I think is quite interesting. Then it further goes on to confirm that one of the main antagonists of the game is a lady called Glastic by the locals, and and she's going to be covered in green and gold ornaments, and she's going to play a bigger role in Resident Evil 9 as well. Then it further confirmed some sort of a merchant sort of character is going to return in Resident Evil 9, named as Hulda, who will be a lady who will help you, guide you through the forest and give you some information about the history about the forest and some treasures you're going to be able to find, which we've seen now with Resident Evil 8 Village. And apparently the monster is going to be scared of this merchant or this bioweapon, and she's normally going to appear around the safe rooms. That would explain as to why the enemies won't be able to enter that zone. And this time around you're going to have 7 different herbs, which is going to be having different features and different effects for you when you combine them. So I think that's quite interesting, because all we've seen is only 3 or 4 different types of herbs with the previous Resident Evil games. And lastly, the game has something to do with the 9th phase of the moon, and that's why it's named as Apocalypse, and we're going to be able to see that sort of sign, and it's going to play a bigger role or huge emphasis into the whole story or the whole theme of Resident Evil 9. And taking this information with a grain of salt, I personally think if that is actually turned out to be true, then Resident Evil 9 is actually going to be the biggest title, which makes sense for them as to why they're taking that much time to produce or develop that game. Then after that point, we've seen some rumors which came out confirming we will be seeing some prominent Resident Evil characters from the previous Resident Evil games to make a return again in Resident Evil 9, because at the end of Resident Evil 8 Village we've seen Chris is now planning to head to headquarters of BSAA, and we still have so many questions left around BSAA's involvement with connections and how they're going to play an integral role in Resident Evil 9. But I personally think these are all just guesses, because at the end of Resident Evil 8 Village everyone could guess what we're going to be seeing, because that's what they alluded at. And I think in the leak which came out in 2021 confirmed that there's going to be some investigation which is going to take place. So you can easily do that by returning with them one of the characters like Jill Valentine or any other protagonist who might be doing the investigation in the area and get pulled into this whole setting, which is likely possible. But I personally think that is just a wild guess. It's just a guess game based on the ending of Resident Evil 8 Village, and I do believe that we will be seeing some of those returning characters to make a return in Resident Evil 9. And after this leak we had no leak until 2023, which was also made by Dusk Golem on his Discord account, where he confirmed that Resident Evil 9 is going to have the highest budget out of the Resident Evil franchise. And he further confirmed that we would be expecting to see that Resident Evil 9 will be released in 2025. So personally, looking at these leaks, which are quite consistent with each other, it kind of confirms we're going to be seeing a brand new setting, a brand new environment, a brand new protagonist, a brand new mechanics, and brand new enemy design. So that makes sense for them to go back to the square one and take as much as their time they can to make sure this game has the quality content, the game is epic in scope, and the game has the new mechanics we will be seeing in Resident Evil 9. So what do you guys think about these leaks I've covered, which we've seen so far about Resident Evil 9? Please do let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below in this video. And that's it for the video, guys. I'll catch you again with another video on my channel. Until then, look after yourself. Have a good one.